No doubt that the loss of 800 jobs at the UK's last tobacco factory is a blow to the economy and devastating for the families of people working there. JTI Gallagher, the company which owns the plant in County Antrim, partially blames EU rules for the decision. So what are the new requirements from Europe, which will soon be coming into force? And is there a balance to be struck between health and jobs? Labour MEP Linda McAvan was in charge of getting the tobacco legislation through the European Parliament, and she joins me now. UKIP has long been critical of the law, and Nathan Gill is here as well. I'm going to start with Linda McAvan. A number of factors were involved leading up to the plant announcing it's going to close. Plant's going to be closed in a few years' time. But as the author of this new law, do you feel some sense of responsibility?
Well, I think what's interesting is that JTI have announced that they're closing in Northern Ireland to move to other parts of the European Union, Poland and Romania. Well, in fact, the Tobacco Products Directive, which they're blaming, will apply in those countries as well. So I'm guessing the real reason is probably cheaper labour costs than to do with the Tobacco Products Directive.
So you don't think it's got anything to do with this law at all? You think it's an excuse?
I think it is an excuse. Of course, the big tobacco companies lobbied against the new law. They want to recruit a whole new generations of smokers to smoke. And they're struggling in the UK, they're struggling across the world. But Polish, Romanian market, exactly the same. The law applies equally to every single EU country, and so that doesn't make sense.
Nathan Gill, Linda McAvan believes that the law that she authored is not responsible here. Is that an argument you would accept?
Well, as with all laws, there's always unintended consequences. And so, you know, when a law comes into being, there will be repercussions that people have not thought about. Now, obviously, 20% of cigarettes smoked in Britain currently are illegal cigarettes. They're being imported, they're counterfeit, they're coming in from criminal gangs. What we're very concerned about is the gold plating that the UK government wants to put onto this legislation for making plain packaging cigarettes.
I mean, the company itself does say that this European law is part of the problem. It specifically mentions the tobacco directive.
Yeah, and if they're saying that, then I would assume that that's probably the case. I mean, right now, people who are smoking still need to smoke cigarettes because they're addicted to it or they like to do it. But whatever their reason, they will buy the cigarettes whether they're made in the UK, made in the EU or made abroad. And what we're very worried about is how really, this seems to be some kind of a charter for criminal gangs.
Let me be clear then, Linda McAvan. Can you explain within this law that will come into force by 2016 some of the terms, what it will mean for cigarettes, for loose tobacco, those kind of things?
I mean, the aim of the law is not aimed at current smokers. It's aimed at stopping a new generation of smokers from being recruited.
I fail to see how this directive is going to stop young people from taking up smoking. And what they're doing is they're saying you cannot sell small packets of cigarettes in cartons of 10, only in 20. Well, you know, if you buy a big bar of chocolate as opposed to a small bar of chocolate, you're still going to eat that bar of chocolate. So, in fact, in a way, indirectly, they're encouraging people to smoke more because you can only buy packs of 20. It's ridiculous.
That's not what Cancer Research UK says. They call them kiddie packs, the 10 packs. That's why doctors, healthcare professionals have been working for years. And healthcare professionals and doctors, Cancer Research UK, are very clear. They strongly back this new law because they want to see the number of children smoking going down.
Linda,
you're going to counter to every advice from every public health
What we need to do
UK.
in order to stop young people from smoking in Britain is to make it socially unacceptable in the same way that Australia made it unacceptable to sunbathe without wearing sunscreen.
How big a consideration was jobs when you were working on this legislation? Was it something that you considered that the law you were making could have consequences, could have jobs, even if you don't accept in this case that your law was to blame?
Yes, we did look at the impact on jobs, and we looked at it, and the impact on jobs was not so big. We have not so many tobacco manufacturers inside the European Union now, mainly because the number of smokers has gone down in Europe, the market's shrinking.
I think the balance was right in this legislation between health and jobs.
No, because there are no health benefits from this legislation. It's completely pie in the sky, and again, it's unintended consequences. Linda mentioned about the fact that UKIP want to bring back smoking in pubs and so forth. If you look at our policy, we don't want to undo the smoking ban. We just want to make it so that pubs which are being decimated because of the smoking ban to be able to have smoking rooms. And the rank hypocrisy of this place, one of the biggest shocks I had when I first came here, was that there are smoking rooms in this building.
Okay.
So the MEPs and the bureaucrats can all smoke indoors.
Okay,
Why
right.
can't our pubs do that in Britain?
I'd like to move on to another aspect of the legislation, which is electronic cigarettes, e-cigarettes. Some of the companies involved are taking a case to the European Court of Justice. They're not happy with the law. Are you confident? Do you still defend the law that was made, seeing as though that they're taking this case?
A lot of e-cigarette companies supported this law. There was a long, long debate, as many people know, about e-cigarettes. The governments of Europe wanted to go a lot further. The MEP said no, e-cigarettes can help some people stop smoking, therefore we want to keep them on the market, we want them regulated on the market. So a law was drafted which is a good balance, which allows products to stay on the market as long as they're regulated.
And are you confident that the European Court of Justice ultimately will uphold what was decided here in the European Parliament?
Well, we know that every single tobacco control measure is always challenged by tobacco companies and now by e-cigarette companies. Every single law is always challenged. Court cases are no surprise, and I think the court will uphold the law, which was very, very detailed discussions of it.
Nathan Gill, UKIP had a great deal of concern about e-cigarettes when this law was being discussed. Do you think in the end that was correctly dealt with, that the law was right on that front, or do you still have issues?
No, and just going along with what Linda said, you know, if governments in Europe were concerned and wanted to take it further, surely this is a matter for national governments. This is about sovereignty. We're grown-ups. Westminster, you know, what's the point of Westminster if all of our laws are being made here for us?
Nonetheless, this was something that was recognised as something where the
28
competence...
governments wanted to do it.
The competence, as they call out here.
But as you said, the governments, many
let-
governments wanted to take it further, but the European Parliament prohibited them from doing that. This has got to be about
That's
sovereignty.
not, no,
If
that's
we
not
want
correct.
laws
Can I just
in...
correct that?
You
Can I
said
just
that.
correct
You just said that.
No, I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
I didn't say the prohibited. It would have been quite able, the governments, to say, OK, we don't do a European law, we'll each legislate nationally. That was perfectly able to do that. They didn't have to actually legislate at European level. Any government can any time say,
So
we'll
why
keep
don't we let them do that?
Well, they could have done it. They chose not to.
Why don't we let them do
The
that?
governments chose not to.
OK, Nathan Gill, do you accept that e-cigarettes need some regulation? That, for example, selling them to children shouldn't be allowed?
We don't want the government going too far with things, which, you know, is where we're coming from. And the reality is, what we've said all along, if the British people and the British government want legislation, they're the ones who should be doing it, not this place, not the European Union.
We're running out of time, but very briefly, to sum up, do you still think that this law is correct? Do you still support it, considering this legal challenge on e-cigarettes and the concern over job losses in places like Northern Ireland?
Absolutely. Everywhere I went, when I showed people the pink lipstick-style packages that cigarette companies are trying to sell and promote to young people, when we show them the sort of gimmick products on the market, when we ultra-slim cigarettes and the marketing techniques that they go to, sending free samples in Germany to young people, yes, this law was needed. OK,
Nathan Gill, very briefly then, do you accept that perhaps this legislation will make things better, or do you think that in the end it will make things
No, as I've said, there will be unintended consequences. There's going to be, you know, our government in Britain relies on £12 billion of revenue from the cigarette industry, and quite frankly, there's going to be, it's a charter for counterfeiting, for illegal gangs. They're going to be bringing in more and more illegal cigarettes. We can't even govern our borders and control our borders with regards to people coming in. How are we going to be able to control it with regards to container loads of cigarettes coming in? We're not.
We're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much, both of you.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.